Greetings, adventurers. You're listening to The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood with me, Professor Atwood. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to tell you about my latest journey. Don't worry, it's a safe space. I'll handle all the danger for you. I designed these stories to help you relax, chill anxiety, and go to sleep. Maybe they'll even put a smile on your face, even if it's a sleepy smile. So please, settle in, relax, and prepare to quietly drift off with me to parts known, unknown, and even some places in between. Comfortable? Very well. Let's get underway. Good evening, adventurers. I hope you're doing well. I also hope you're all cozy and settled in because tonight I'm going to tell you all about Site F, my greenhouse and hydroponics lab. Now, I did mention that I do have carnivorous plants, but as I said before, they are emotionally carnivorous, and some of them only consume negative emotions. So the feeding of them can be, difficult at times. Luckily, we have a poet who just moved into the neighborhood this year, and he's been looking to make some extra money, so I often have him feed the plants. And if he's too busy, my neighbor has 2 teenage daughters, so that's more than enough negative emotions for the plants. In fact, after some apparent drama after prom night, I had to slow things down a bit as the plants were getting too full. Anyway, before I tell you about Site F, the greenhouse, I'd like to mention something about our stories, especially for the new listeners. You Professor Atwood OGs, that's what Bradley says, already know the score. Anyway, the stories are designed for you to drift in and out of, and while yes, I do like to tell you a full story every episode, drifting in and out or falling completely asleep is factored into the equation. You can pick things up anywhere, and that's why I do the story recaps at the beginning, and you can go back and listen to previous adventures anytime you wish. So by all means, enjoy the show any way you wish. It's designed that way. No rules and no pressure, adventurers. And as always, don't forget to rate and review the show and maybe post about the show because that's how other adventurers find us. And if you want more info, merchandise, and donation and Patreon subscription options, you can always go to whitecatentertainment.com. All right, let's get back to the story. As you can imagine, I was still quite jet-lagged from my mission to Mars, so I was more than a little tired. But that didn't stop me from having a great visit with my son Patrick and my daughter Ellen, who had surprised me just so we could all be together for a family visit. We did some fun touristy things like seeing the Mann Chinese Theater, and Mission Specialist Janet and Flight Commander Barry invited us all to the Magic Castle for Sunday brunch and some magic shows, and we happily accepted the invitation. I always enjoy the Magic Castle. Well, in small doses. Once every couple years is good enough for me. I do enjoy hearing the ghostly piano player play and even take requests. I requested Daydream Believer by the Monkees, again, I always do that when I'm there, and the ghost knew it and started playing it. Each magic show was fun and interesting, and while I do enjoy close-up magic, I much prefer the big spectacle of the main room, where the tricks and illusions are just bigger and grander. But like I said, I like magic shows in small doses. It's a fun distraction and definitely puts a smile on my face. But I prefer the magic, relatively and colorfully speaking, and the mystery of the real world, and there's so much more of it left to explore and discover. But I get it. Explore magic and mystery safely in a controlled environment, and then eventually you may be ready for the real thing. We went out to dinner, saw a few museums, including the Getty, my favorite, and had an amazing time. But then it was time to say goodbye. These visits always seem too short. Patrick had another classified mission he was off to, but this time he said it was much closer than Mars and he couldn't say where. We both shared a smile. It was obviously the moon, and if I told you what was going on the moon right now, I don't even know if you'd believe me. Let's just say NASA keeps more than just the existence of Martians from the public. Anyway, Ellen had to get going as well, as she had a celebrity cruise she had to promote with celebrities I had never heard of. She said that's exactly why they needed her. Now, I'll never understand PR and marketing, but I wished her good luck and said I hoped things went well. I bid a bittersweet farewell to my kids and thought about how proud I was of both of them. The old saying about roots and wings holds true about children. And not to get off on a tangent, but the history of the quote itself is interesting and a little vague. There's a 1953 book, Where Main Street Meets the River by Harding Carter, who was a prominent newspaper editor where it may have appeared first. The expression was credited to an anonymous, quote, wise woman. A wise woman said to me that there are only two lasting bequests we can hope to give our children. One of these, she said, is roots, the other, wings, and they can only be grown, these roots and these wings, in the home. We want our sons and daughters' roots to go deep into the soil beneath them and into the past, not in arrogance, but in confidence. It's definitely a quote to consider. Anyway, with my kids gone and Bradley on vacation, the lab was once again very quiet. I heard Peter the gardener outside for a bit, trimming the bushes and making new hedge sculptures. But other than that, the home lab was quite quiet, with minimal activity. Sometimes it's nice to just relax and enjoy all that quiet. And that's exactly what I did for a while. I went to the home hub room and played some video games and got a few rounds of my sit-down spy hunter game in, which was a gift courtesy of Professor Felice after he needed components from my game machines for my ship The Recovery to effect repairs for his aging systems. I hoped he had replaced all those legacy systems and had done a full round of upgrades by now. I was enjoying my first quiet day off in a while. No need to rush anything. You need a work-life balance, even for adventurers. So I decided to spend a little more time in my garden. Peter had done an amazing job in my absence, like I said. Everything was meticulously manicured, and he even spelled "Welcome Back to Earth" in hedge topiary art, which must have taken some time. I sat on a bench and just watched the gentle breeze move the trees and flowers and felt the warm sun on my face. When you're in space for a while, you certainly do appreciate the sun on your face when you return. The sprinklers were still cycling, so I listened to the sound of the gently spraying water as I relaxed and enjoyed the garden. Peter had added a new Birds of Paradise section, which was one of my favorite flowers. He managed to plant ones with all different colors, which was interesting too. I took my shoes off and felt the soft grass under my feet as well. I felt connected with the earth, and knew that I truly was pretty connected, as I discovered a while back that there's an entrance to the underground market right in my garden. That would come in handy in a pinch, that's for sure. They literally have everything down there, including a tiny dragon. I wondered how Evan the concierge was doing. I should pay him a visit in the near future for sure. As I wiggled my toes in the grass, I was reminded of Professor Wyman, who was a big fan of a practice called earthing. And while he admitted his research and data proved inconclusive, he enjoyed the practice and said even if it was pseudoscience, it brought him joy, so he would continue to do it. In fact, he even spent some time at the Earthing Institute. Now, the Earthing Institute gathers researchers and therapists who believe that to maintain or regain good health, it is necessary to restore direct contact with Earth by removing floors, carpets, and especially shoes. Walking barefoot and sleeping on the ground are conceived as useful tools for achieving the earthing or grounding of the body. It is claimed that thanks to earthing, one would benefit from the extraordinary healing power of nature by means of the transferal of electrons from the Earth's surface to the body. A primordial and naturally stabilized electric reference point for all body biological circuits is created, according to the Institute. According to its practitioners, earthing has preventative and curative effects on chronic inflammation, aging-related disorders, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, arthritis, autoimmune disorders, cancer, and even depression and autism. Okay, these are clearly some bold claims. The concept of earthing has been criticized, and correctly, as pseudoscience by skeptics in the medical community. A review of the available literature on the subject was written by several people that are financially tied to the company espousing the practice of earthing. There's another old saying, follow the money, especially in politics, wellness science, and cotton candy, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, Professor Wyman acknowledged these inconclusive findings in his paper, but also said he just liked the feel of grass on his feet. So wasn't that worth something? I knew what he meant, and I agreed. He had a point. But now, adventurers, I want to tell you about Site F, the greenhouse. This is a special site, and it is partly inside, partly outside, and blends in beautifully to my exterior gardens. So the garden was the perfect place to start the tour. The thing that is special about the greenhouse, besides the emotionally carnivorous plants, is that there is a full hydroponics lab inside, and I have a few ongoing experiments happening there as of right now. Hydroponics is always a field that has fascinated me, and I feel the future applications are manifold. The Site F greenhouse is all glass, so the sun can shine through, but it is smart glass, and I can dim or block certain UV spectrum light when it gets to be a bit too much for the plants. It's mostly automated, but I have manual control as well. I didn't really want to install a shade system. It's cleaner and more efficient just to have the glass itself do all the work. The greenhouse is bright and welcoming, and I made brick paths to contrast with the waterproof floor tiles. I just wanted it to look a little festive with a hint of whimsy when you walk in. You know, science doesn't always need to be serious. Anyway, the first thing you see when you walk in from the garden is the hydroponics lab. You see, hydroponics is a type of horticulture and a subset of hydroculture, which involves growing plants, usually crops or medicinal plants, without soil by using water-based mineral nutrient solutions in an artificial environment. Terrestrial or aquatic plants may grow freely with their roots exposed to the nutritious liquid, or the roots may be mechanically supported by an inert medium such as perlite, gravel, or other substrates. And interesting, a lot of these are also used at the bottom of aquariums, too. Despite inert media, roots can cause changes of the rhizosphere pH, and root exudates can affect rhizosphere biology and physiological balance of the nutrient solution when secondary metabolites are produced in plants. Now, transgenic plants grown hydroponically allow the release of pharmaceutical proteins as part of the root exudate into the hydroponic medium. The nutrients used in hydroponic systems can come from many different organic or inorganic sources, including fish excrement, duck manure, purchased chemical fertilizers, or artificial standard or hybrid nutrient solutions. I mean, it's all pretty much the same thing, just mentioning different animals. In contrast to field cultivations, plants are commonly known hydroponically in a greenhouse or contained environment on inert media, adapted to the Controlled Environment Agriculture, or CEA, process. Plants commonly grown hydroponically include tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, strawberries, and lettuces, as well as Arabidopsis thaliana, which serves as a model organism in plant science and genetics. But as you can imagine, while they all sound great, unlike the others, Arabidopsis thaliana isn't all that appetizing on a salad. Hydroponics offers many advantages, notably a decrease in water usage in agriculture. To grow 2.2 pounds of tomatoes using intensive farming methods requires 57 gallons of water, using hydroponics, only 18 gallons, and only 5.3 gallons using aeroponics. But we'll get to that in a minute. I use both methods in my greenhouse, and as while I have no scientific evidence to base this on, certain fruits and vegetables taste better using one method over the other. But Bradley disputes this conclusion, saying all the carrots taste the same. I have to disagree. The aeroponics seem to give them a little extra something. Anyway, hydroponic cultures lead to higher biomass and protein production compared to other growth substrates of plants cultivated in the same environmental conditions and supplied with equal amounts of nutrients. In other words, you get bigger, juicier grapes with hydroponics. Since hydroponic growing takes much less water and nutrients to grow produce, and climate change threatens agricultural yields, it could be possible in the future for people in harsh environments with little accessible water to hydroponically grow their own plant-based food. And this really is where the true benefit and future of hydroponics comes in. As we continue to be, well, not so kind to the planet, we need cleaner and more efficient ways to grow food and feed an ever-growing population. Hydroponics can achieve these goals using less space and less water, and you never have to worry about tilling dried-out soil because there is no soil. Of course, there's always a naysayer. A few years back at the science convention in Munich, Professor Needleman scoffed at all things hydroponic and said we're all going to be evolving into beings of pure energy soon, so any research and development spent on archaic things like food, clothing, and shelter is a complete waste of time, as all those things will soon be obsolete. Needless to say, Professor Needleman soon lost his Munich Science Convention privileges after a predictably disastrous presentation, and was last seen explaining his theories in a grassy field to a large herd of uninterested goats. Anyway, hydroponics is not only used on Earth, but has also proven itself in plant production experiments in space. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to tour the hydroponics lab on the International Space Station, as we were quite busy dealing with the giant tardigrade problem, but I heard the space watermelons were particularly sweet this season. Perhaps they would help keep Professor Andrews away from the astronaut ice cream. Oh well, next time. In recent decades, NASA has done extensive hydroponic research for its Controlled Ecological Life Support System, or CELSS, or CELS, some people call it. Now this is interesting. Hydroponics research mimicking a Martian environment uses LED lighting to grow in a different color spectrum with much less heat. This is, of course, restricted to the environment on the surface of Mars, not underground where the Martians live. NASA has done a lot of research and development on Martian hydroponics that's also been done in conjunction with terraforming, which makes perfect sense. Ray Wheeler, a plant physiologist, not to be confused with a plant psychologist who is called in when a plant is sad, at Kennedy Space Center's Space Life Science Lab, believes that hydroponics will create advances within space travel as a bio-regenerative life support system. Now, this research is promising, but it might be easier to just make the spaceships faster. But a comprehensive approach to space travel is always a good idea. So anyway, there are two main variations for each medium: sub-irrigation and top irrigation. For all techniques, most hydroponic reservoirs are now built of plastic, but other materials have been used, including concrete, glass, metal, vegetable solids, and wood. The container should exclude light to prevent algae and fungal growth in the hydroponic medium. In static solution culture, plants are grown in containers of nutrient solutions, such as glass mason jars, typically for in-home applications, pots, buckets, tubs, or tanks. The solution is usually gently aerated, but may be unaerated as well. If unaerated, the solution level is kept low enough that enough roots are above the solution that they get adequate oxygen. A hole is cut in the top of the reservoir for each plant. If it is a jar or a tub, it may be its lid, but otherwise, cardboard, foil, paper, wood, or metal may be put on top. A single reservoir can be dedicated to a single plant or to various plants. Reservoir size can be increased as plant size increases. A homemade system can be constructed from food containers or glass canning jars with aeration provided by an aquarium pump, aquarium airline tubing, aquarium valves, or even a biofilm of green algae on the glass through photosynthesis. Clear containers can also be covered with aluminum foil, butcher paper, black plastic, or other material to eliminate the effects of negative phototropism. The nutrient solution is changed either on a schedule, such as once a week, or when the concentration drops below a certain level is determined with an electrical conductivity meter. Whenever the solution is depleted below a certain level, either water or fresh nutrient solution is added. A float valve can be used to automatically maintain the solution level. In raft solution culture, plants are placed in a sheet of buoyant plastic that is floated on the surface of the nutrient solution. That way, the solution level never drops below the roots. In continuous flow solution culture, the nutrient solution constantly flows past the roots. It's much easier to automate than the static solution culture because sampling and adjustments to the temperature, pH, and nutrient concentrations can be made in a large storage tank that has potential to serve thousands of plants. A popular variation is the nutrient film technique, or NFT. Okay, not the NFT you're thinking of. And there are no bored apes in the hydroponics lab, as Bradley said. And once again, I didn't really know what he was talking about. Now, a very shallow stream of water containing all the dissolved nutrients required for plant growth is recirculated in a thin layer past a bare root mat of plants in a watertight channel with an upper surface exposed to air. As a consequence, an abundant supply of oxygen is provided to the roots of the plants. A properly designed NFT system is based on using the right channel slope, the right flow rate, and the right channel length. The main advantage of the NFT system over other forms of hydroponics is that the plant roots are exposed to adequate supplies of water, oxygen, and nutrients. In all other forms of production, there's a conflict between the supply of these requirements, since excessive or deficient amounts of one results in an imbalance of one or both. NFT, because of its design, provides a system where all three requirements for healthy plant growth can be met at the same time, provided that the simple concept of NFT is always remembered and practiced. The result of these advantages is that higher yields of high-quality produce are obtained over an extended period of cropping. A downside of NFT is that it has very little buffering against interruptions in the flow, like power outages. But overall, it is probably one of the most productive techniques. As I said, my hydroponics lab is split up into two sections: regular hydroponics and aeroponics. They are similar, obviously, with a few differences. You see, aeroponics is a system where roots are continuously or discontinuously kept in an environment saturated with fine drops, a mist or an aerosol, of nutrient solution. The method requires no substrate and entails growing plants with the roots suspended in a deep air or growth chamber, with the roots periodically wetted with a fine mist of atomized nutrients. Excellent aeration is the main advantage of aeroponics. Aeroponic techniques have proven to be commercially successful for propagation, seed germination, seed potato production, tomato production, leaf crops, and microgreens. Since inventor Richard Stoner, yes, Stoner, commercialized aeroponic technology in 1983, aeroponics have been implemented as an alternative to water-intensive hydroponic systems worldwide. Another distinct advantage of aeroponics over hydroponics is that any species of plants can be grown in a true aeroponic system because the microenvironment of an aeroponic can be finely controlled. Another limitation of hydroponics is that certain species of plants can only survive for so long in water before they become waterlogged. In contrast, suspended aeroponic plants receive 100% of the available oxygen and carbon dioxide to their root zone, stems, and leaves, thus accelerating biomass growth and reducing rooting times. NASA research has shown that aeroponically grown plants have an 80% increase in dry weight biomass, essential minerals, compared to hydroponically grown plants. Aeroponics also uses 65% less water than hydroponics. NASA concluded that aeroponically grown plants require a quarter of the nutrient input compared to hydroponics. Unlike hydroponically grown plants, aeroponically grown plants will not suffer transplant shock when transplanted to soil, and offers growers the ability to reduce the spread of disease and pathogens. Aeroponics is also widely used in laboratory studies of plant physiology and plant pathology. Aeroponic techniques have been given special attention from NASA since a mist is easier to handle than a liquid in a zero-gravity environment. Honestly, I do prefer the aeroponics technique since it saves even more water, and I feel like it's a little bit more advanced and a little easier to control. It's a little more complicated for sure, getting the mixtures exactly right, but it's worth it. Now, the other half of my greenhouse is dedicated to traditional growing and traditional plants, with the exception of my carnivorous section. I've also been experimenting with different frequencies of UV light to see if it affects growth of the carnivorous plants or it changes their appetite for specific emotions. So far, it hasn't. However, the plants seem to prefer certain spectrums of light depending on their mood, or at least the mood they're hungry for, which I find interesting. I have a whole section of emotionally carnivorous plants who will only consume joy and laughter. So Bradley and I will often come down here and watch some classic comedies together, from The Three Stooges to Blackadder, and that seems to satisfy the plants as we laugh and enjoy the classic comedy programming. And since he's a bit younger, a lot of what I show him is new to him, but now he's a fan. The Marx Brothers is up next, and I think he's really going to enjoy duck soup. The rest of the greenhouse is devoted to fruits and vegetables, as I enjoy them as fresh as possible. It was tough to get the grapefruit tree to grow, but we managed it. We also have plenty of carrots and potatoes, and I often give the neighbors the extra vegetables as a thank you for taking care of the carnivorous plants when Bradley and I are both away. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tour of the greenhouse. I'll admit it was kind of a hybrid tour and day off for me, which I enjoyed and definitely needed. It was a relaxing day and felt pretty good. However, if I had known what was right around the corner and the challenge I would soon face, I probably would not have been quite as relaxed. But I will tell you all about a very unexpected challenge next time. But before I end this evening's story, I want to talk to you about something. The thing about hydroponics is that while the science and technology behind it is fascinating, the philosophy is compelling too. Remember, I said we'd be getting into some philosophy with the science sometimes. Here's the thing. For me, and for most hydroponics practitioners, it's about looking to the future. How can we make food crops and food more sustainable and more efficient? How can we do it in places where there's no viable soil, like in the desert, on top of a mountain, or even in space? As we find the answers, it can create a roadmap of what the future holds for us all. Now, you can dial it back and look to your own future, but really, they're related. Everyone's future is connected, on this planet and off it, and sometimes we forget that. So look to the future and understand that your neighbor is doing the same. Let's get there together. Good night, adventurers.
The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood was created, written, and performed by Chris Mancini and produced by White Cat Entertainment. It is a work of fiction. Maybe. Music and sound design by Ron Tansky at rontanskymusic.com. For more info and merchandise, including t-shirts, mugs, and blankets, go to whitecatentertainment.com.